There is a dangerous epidemic sweeping across our country. It's a crisis that strikes at the very heart of our communities and our sense of safety. Criminals are dressing up as police officers. They are using fake badges, uniforms, and even police cars to commit horrific crimes. They trick their way into our homes. They rob us, they assault us, and sometimes, they kill us. This isn't a problem in some distant place, it's happening in our neighborhoods, from the sun-drenched streets of Phoenix to the busy avenues of San Francisco. This wave of impersonation creates fear and confusion, leaving honest citizens in a terrible position. When a person wearing a badge knocks on your door, you are supposed to feel safe, you are supposed to believe that help has arrived, but these imposters have turned that symbol of trust into a weapon. They exploit our respect for the law to carry out their evil plans. Every time one of these fake cops commits a crime, they do more than just harm their direct victims. They poison the well of public trust, making it harder for real dedicated officers to do their jobs. The fear they spread is a cancer, growing with each new headline and each new victim. The problem is made much worse by another related crisis. We see videos almost every day of real police officers breaking the law. We see them using too much force. We see them entering homes without permission. We see them refusing to identify themselves when they are legally required to do so. This misconduct, captured on body cameras and cell phones, creates a deep and damaging rift between law enforcement and the communities they are sworn to protect. It plants a seed of doubt in everyone's mind. It makes us question the authority of anyone wearing a uniform. This dangerous combination of fake cops committing crimes and real cops breaking rules has put us all in an impossible situation. How can you tell the difference between a legitimate officer and a criminal in disguise? When both can act outside the law, the line becomes blurred and incredibly dangerous. This essay will look at this growing epidemic. We will examine the terrible crimes being committed by police impersonators. We will also look at the real misconduct that fuels this crisis of confidence. Most importantly, we will talk about what is at stake, our safety, our trust, and the very foundation of law and order in our communities. Just last month, in May 2025, a quiet neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, was shattered by a brutal act of deception. In the dead of night, residents were awakened by the sight of a vehicle with flashing police-style lights pulling up to a family home. Two men, dressed head to toe in tactical gear that looked exactly like a police SWAT team uniform, got out of the car. They were armed, they looked official, and they moved with confidence. They approached the front door and announced themselves loudly, shouting, "Police! Search warrant!" Their appearance was so convincing that no one would have had any reason to doubt them. The family inside, believing they were dealing with legitimate law enforcement, opened their door. That single act of compliance led to a nightmare. The moment the door was unlocked, the armed men forced their way inside. It became clear very quickly that they were not there to serve any warrant. They were violent criminals on a mission to rob and terrorize. The situation escalated rapidly, and in the ensuing chaos, the fake officers opened fire. One resident was shot and killed, and another was seriously injured. Their life changed forever by this horrific home invasion. The criminals then fled the scene, disappearing back into the night. The aftermath of the Phoenix attack has left the community reeling and the police force scrambling for answers. The suspects, who were so effective at looking like real cops, have not been caught. They remain at large, a terrifying reminder of how vulnerable we can be. The Phoenix Police Department has warned residents to be extra cautious. They have urged citizens to verify the identity of any officer who comes to their door, especially in unusual circumstances. But this advice, while necessary, highlights the core of the problem. In a moment of fear and confusion, how can a regular person safely challenge someone who looks and acts like a cop? This case is a tragic example of the police impersonation epidemic at its most deadly. These criminals did not just steal property, they stole a life and shattered a family's sense of security. They used the symbols of law and order as a key to unlock a door and unleash terror. The Phoenix home invasion is a stark warning for every community in America. It shows how easily the trust we place in a uniform can be twisted and used against us. The search for these killers continues, but the fear they created will linger for a long, long time. The deadly home invasion in Phoenix is not an isolated incident. It is the latest chapter in a disturbing story that is unfolding in cities all across the United States. This plague of police impersonation is a nationwide problem, with criminals using the same terrifying tactics to prey on unsuspecting victims. From the West Coast to the East Coast, the stories are alarmingly similar. The criminals are bold, they are convincing, and the consequences for their victims are devastating. They adapt their methods to exploit specific communities, but the goal is always the same: to use the authority of a police officer for criminal gain. In San Francisco, a particularly cruel scam targeted the Chinese community in March 2025. Scammers, pretending to be police officers from China, would contact victims by phone or video call. They used technology to their advantage, spoofing their phone numbers to make it look like the call was coming from a real police department. On video calls, they would appear in fake police uniforms, sitting in rooms designed to look like official police stations. They would tell their victims that their names were connected to a serious crime back in China, and that they needed to wire money immediately to a secure account to clear their name. One frightened victim lost $23,000 in this sophisticated scam. The violence is often more direct. In Miami, Florida, in March of 2024, a group of 3 men impersonating Drug Enforcement Administration agents forced their way into a home. They restrained the people inside, assaulted them, and then ransacked the house, stealing cash and electronics. A few months earlier, in Houston, Texas, in October 2023, a group of criminals dressed as a police SWAT team staged a violent home invasion that ended with the shooting death of a resident. They looked so professional and were so heavily armed that the victims had no chance to resist or question their authority until it was far too late. This pattern of violence has also been seen in Los Angeles. In July of 2023, 2 men used a car with flashing lights and fake badges to force their way into a home. Once inside, they tied up the residents and stole their valuables. In each of these cases, in Phoenix, San Francisco, Miami, Houston, and Los Angeles, the criminals relied on the same core deception. They knew that the sight of a uniform and a badge inspires a powerful, almost automatic sense of compliance. They have turned our respect for the law into our greatest vulnerability, and cities everywhere are struggling to warn their citizens about this growing threat. To be successful, police impersonators need to be convincing. They can't just say they are the police, they have to look the part. Over time, these criminals have developed a toolkit of deception, using a variety of props and tactics to create a believable illusion of authority. The most important tool, of course, is the uniform. It is incredibly easy these days to buy realistic-looking police gear online. Tactical vests, shirts with police-style patches, duty belts, and even hats can be purchased from specialty stores or websites with few questions asked. These uniforms instantly command respect and lower a victim's defenses. Next in the toolkit is the badge. A badge is a powerful symbol. It represents the power and authority of the state. Criminals know this, and they use fake badges to great effect. These can range from cheap, toy-like shields to high-quality replicas that are nearly indistinguishable from the real thing. When flashed quickly or seen from a distance, even a poor-quality badge can be enough to convince someone. The impersonator doesn't need the badge to pass a close inspection. They just need it to work for a few crucial seconds, to gain entry into a home, or to get a driver to pull over. The deception often extends to the vehicle. Many of these criminals equip their personal cars with equipment to make them look like unmarked police vehicles. The most common addition is a set of flashing red and blue lights that can be placed on the dashboard or in the grille. These are also widely available for purchase online. When a driver sees those flashing lights in their rearview mirror, their first instinct is to pull over. The impersonator is counting on that immediate, conditioned response. Some more sophisticated operations have even used retired police cars, complete with official-looking decals to make their disguise nearly perfect. Finally, the impersonator's most effective tool is their script. They use language and commands that we have all heard on television or in movies. They shout things like, "Police! Open up or let me see your hands!" They project an air of confidence and urgency, leaving the victim with little time to think or question what is happening. They know that most people want to cooperate with law enforcement. By combining the uniform, the badge, the vehicle, and the right words, these criminals create a powerful and often deadly illusion. They have weaponized our trust, and their toolkit is alarmingly easy to assemble. The crisis of police impersonation does not exist in a vacuum. It's amplified by a second, equally disturbing trend: A surge in documented cases of real police officers engaging in misconduct. Thanks to body cameras and the cell phone in every citizen's pocket, we're seeing more evidence than ever of officers breaking the very laws they have sworn to uphold. This includes everything from using excessive force and conducting illegal searches to, lying in official reports. When real officers act like criminals, it becomes dangerously difficult for the public to tell who is who. The line between protector and predator begins to fade. One of the most common and damaging forms of misconduct is an officer's refusal to identify themselves. In many states and cities, officers are required by law or department policy to provide their name and badge number when asked by a citizen. Yet, videos frequently surface showing officers refusing to do so. They might cover their badge, turn off their body camera, or simply ignore the request. This behavior immediately destroys trust. It makes the officer seem like they have something to hide, and it leaves citizens feeling powerless. If a real officer refuses to follow a simple rule like identifying themselves, how can we expect to trust them with our lives? Recent cases from across the country show just how serious this problem is. In Memphis, Tennessee, in August 2023, the nation was horrified by a viral video showing multiple officers beating a handcuffed man. The sheer brutality of the attack, carried out by sworn officers, led to swift action. The officers were fired and faced criminal charges, but the damage to the public's trust in the Memphis Police Department was immense. This was not a case of a single bad apple, but a group of officers acting together, a fact that made the incident even more chilling and raised questions about the department's culture. In Seattle, Washington, in January 2024, a controversial arrest sparked protests after the officers involved refused to identify themselves to onlookers who were filming the incident. Their refusal to provide their names and badge numbers only fueled public anger and suspicion that the arrest was improper. This lack of transparency turned a routine law enforcement action into a major community issue. These incidents, and countless others like them, create a toxic environment of fear and mistrust. They provide cover for impersonators and make every police interaction more dangerous for both citizens and the good officers who are trying to do their jobs correctly. Nowhere is the impact of police misconduct more clearly seen than in a recent case out of Chicago. In April of this year, 2025, details emerged from a lawsuit that painted a terrifying picture of a family's rights being violated by the very people sworn to protect them. Body camera footage released as part of the legal proceedings showed Chicago police officers executing a search warrant on the wrong home. They broke down the door and stormed in with guns drawn, only to find a terrified family who had no connection whatsoever to the crime being investigated. The officers had relied on bad information and failed to do their due diligence. The video showed the family, including young children, being held at gunpoint while their home was turned upside down. The footage captured their confusion, their fear, and their desperate pleas to the officers. What made the situation even worse was how the officers handled their mistake. Even after it became clear they were in the wrong place, their demeanor remained aggressive and dismissive. This was not just a simple mistake. It was a traumatic invasion of the one place a family is supposed to feel safe. The incident was a profound betrayal of the public's trust and a clear violation of the family's constitutional rights. The city of Chicago ultimately settled the lawsuit with the family for $1.2 million. While the financial settlement provides some measure of compensation, it cannot erase the psychological trauma inflicted upon them. The money comes from taxpayers. But the officers who conducted the wrongful raid often face little to no personal accountability, which only deepens public frustration. This case is just one of many similar incidents in Chicago and other cities, where faulty warrants and aggressive tactics have led to innocent people being terrorized in their own homes. These actions are not just mistakes, they are systemic failures. This type of official misconduct has a direct and powerful connection to the police impersonation epidemic. When a family hears a loud bang at the door and sees armed figures in tactical gear shouting "police," how are they supposed to react? If they have seen news stories like the one from Chicago, they might hesitate. They might wonder if the people at their door are real police making a terrible mistake, or if they are criminals disguised as police. That moment of hesitation could be fatal in either scenario. The actions of lawless officers give cover to criminals and put every citizen in an impossible and dangerous position. The parallel crises of police impersonation and police misconduct have created a toxic fog of doubt that now hangs over every interaction between law enforcement and the public. This confusion is not just a feeling, it is a direct threat to public safety. When citizens can no longer be sure if the person wearing a uniform is a real cop or a fake one, the fundamental contract between the police and the people is broken. Every traffic stop becomes more tense. Every knock on the door becomes a moment of potential dread. This uncertainty benefits only one group, the criminals. Impersonators thrive in this environment of mistrust. They know that stories of police misconduct are widespread. They understand that the public is wary and confused. A criminal disguised as a cop can now explain away suspicious behavior. If a victim questions why an officer is acting strangely or refusing to show proper identification, the impersonator can simply act more aggressively, mimicking the behavior of bad cops seen in viral videos. The victim, fearing that they are dealing with a real but abusive officer, may comply out of fear of making the situation worse. The misconduct of real officers provides the perfect camouflage for fake ones. This blurring of the lines also erodes one of the most important tools that real police officers have: community cooperation. Solving crimes requires trust. Police need witnesses to come forward. They need victims to report crimes. They need the community to believe that the police are on their side. But when people see videos of officers violating rights, or when they hear stories of fake cops robbing people, the trust disappears. A person who witnesses a crime might hesitate to talk to the police, fearing that the officers themselves could be corrupt, or that they might become a target. This erosion of trust has dangerous, real-world consequences. It means fewer crimes get solved, and more criminals remain on the street. Good, honest police officers find their jobs becoming harder and more dangerous because the community they are trying to protect is afraid of them. When a real officer knocks on a door during an emergency, they may be met with resistance from a citizen who fears they are an imposter. This can lead to tragic misunderstandings, escalating encounters, and violence that could have been avoided. The doubt created by both fake cops and bad cops puts everyone at greater risk. The widespread mistrust of law enforcement has put our entire nation on edge. The cost of this crisis is measured not just in stolen money or property, but in lives lost, communities fractured, and a growing sense of fear and instability. When people lose faith in the police, they begin to feel that they are on their own. This can lead to a dangerous mindset where citizens feel they have to take the law into their own hands, making our society less safe for everyone. The social fabric that holds our communities together begins to tear when we can no longer trust our protectors. This climate of fear changes how people behave every day. People may become hesitant to call 911 during an emergency, worried about who might show up at their door. They might not pull over for an unmarked police car, creating the potential for a dangerous high-speed chase with a real officer. Immigrant communities, who are often targeted by impersonators and are sometimes fearful of law enforcement to begin with, may be driven further into the shadows. They become the perfect victims, unable or unwilling to report crimes for fear of drawing attention to themselves. This creates entire populations of vulnerable people for criminals to exploit. The damage to the institution of policing is also immense. The vast majority of police officers are dedicated public servants who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. But their hard work and sacrifice are undermined by the actions of the few who engage in misconduct and by the criminals who steal their identity. It becomes harder to recruit new officers. The morale of existing officers suffers. They feel unfairly painted with the same brush as the worst examples of their profession, leading to burnout and cynicism. This downward spiral weakens our police forces from the inside out. Ultimately, the high cost of this mistrust is a less secure, more divided America. The bond between the police and the public is a sacred one, built on the idea that officers are accountable to the people they serve. When that bond is broken, either by criminals in disguise or by officers who betray their oath, the consequences are severe. We are left with a society where citizens are afraid of the police and the police are alienated from their communities. Rebuilding that trust is one of the most urgent challenges we face as a nation, and it will require a profound commitment to change from all sides. We are at a critical crossroads. The epidemic of police impersonators and the crisis of police misconduct have created a perfect storm of fear and confusion, leaving the American public caught in the middle. We cannot continue down this path. The safety of our communities and the integrity of our justice system hang in the balance. The path back to trust will not be easy, but it is essential. It requires immediate and decisive action on two fronts: cracking down on the criminals who pose as police and demanding absolute accountability for real officers who break the law. First, we must make it much harder for criminals to acquire the tools of the impersonation trade. There must be stronger regulations on the sale of police uniforms, badges, and emergency vehicle equipment. We need to treat these items not as simple costumes, but as controlled materials that can be used to commit serious crimes. Law enforcement agencies must also engage in aggressive public awareness campaigns, teaching citizens how to safely verify an officer's identity. This includes knowing what a real badge and ID look like, and knowing they have the right to call 911 to confirm that an officer has been dispatched to their location. At the same time, we must have a zero-tolerance policy for police misconduct. This means robust internal affairs investigations, independent civilian oversight boards with real power, and a commitment from prosecutors to charge officers who break the law. Accountability cannot be optional. Officers who use excessive force, conduct illegal searches, or refuse to identify themselves must face serious consequences. Body cameras must be on, and the footage must be made public. When the public sees that bad officers are swiftly removed and held accountable, trust can begin to heal. This is a fight for the soul of our communities. It is a fight that law enforcement cannot win alone. It requires all of us to be vigilant, to be informed, and to demand better. We must support the good police officers who honor their oath by helping them root out the ones who don't. We must create a culture where the actions of a criminal impersonator and an abusive officer are seen as equally unacceptable. Only by restoring accountability and transparency can we begin to rebuild the broken trust, clear the fog of doubt, and ensure that when we see a badge, it is once again a symbol of safety, not a reason to be afraid. Our lives depend on it.